What happens when the world's superpowers collide? Their armies poised on the brink of annihilation. Their missiles armed with fire that could scorch continents. Their leaders drunk on pride and ambition. Yet blind to the one who rules over every kingdom and every war. Could the rising tensions in our cities, the whispers of secret alliances, the cyber wars and nuclear threats, be the very echo of a prophecy written thousands of years ago, now shaking the earth beneath our feet? The night sky was torn apart by streaks of fire, not the ordinary stars of heaven, but the blazing trails of weapons launched with deadly precision. Across the continents, cities once thought invincible trembled under the shadow of unseen terror. Governments scrambled, their intelligence networks buzzing with panic. Yet the fear was not only human. It seemed as if the very earth shivered, aware that something far greater than man's imagination was stirring. In the north, the legions of Gog and Magog gathered, a force whispered of in ancient scrolls, their armor glinting in the cold moonlight, their eyes fixed on a singular, terrifying purpose. Behind them, nations whispered and conspired, forming alliances in shadows, calculating strategies that would decide the fate of millions. The air smelled of oil and steel, of smoke and ash, as if the very elements were bracing for the apocalypse to come. Children cried in frightened homes. Parents clutched them close, whispering prayers that seemed to vanish into the roar of jets and the clatter of armored divisions on highways. Markets emptied, lights flickered, and the hum of civilization fell silent in the face of a storm no one could command. Yet above the chaos, the heavens were not silent. Thunder rolled across mountains and plains, as if speaking directly to the hearts of kings, a voice older than empires, warning that no army can defy the divine. The prophets of old had foretold such a day. Ezekiel spoke of the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, gathering from the north to lay waste to the land of Israel. Revelation spoke of the final battle, where all nations would converge against the holy city, and yet their efforts would serve a purpose far beyond human comprehension. And now, as dawn cracked like a sword across the horizon, these ancient words seemed alive, shimmering in the smoke and fire of a world teetering on the edge. Armies collided with a fury that shook mountains and valleys alike. The sound of artillery echoed like the roar of a vengeful beast. Missiles carved the skies with deadly trails of flame. Yet the war was not only in the flesh. It raged in the unseen realm of principalities and powers, a cosmic struggle of light and darkness, where every human battle was but a reflection of an eternal conflict. This is no mere story of nations and weapons. This is prophecy made manifest, a mystery written across the scrolls of history and the headlines of today. The gathering of Gog and Magog is not only a threat to Israel, it is a herald of Armageddon, a prelude to a reckoning that spans all nations and all time. This is not just history, it is prophecy unfolding before our eyes. The time of the end is no longer distant. It whispers in the wind, rumbles beneath the feet of armies, and burns in the hearts of those who watch and wait. The question is not if, but when, and whether humanity will see the signs before it is too late. Long before the world quaked beneath the march of modern armies, long before the whispers of nuclear fire haunted the dreams of men, the story of Gog and Magog was already etched into the scrolls of eternity. From the earliest dawn of human history, nations were born not merely of land, but of bloodlines, of divine covenants, and of promises whispered by the Most High to patriarchs who walked with God, the descendants of Noah scattered across the earth after the flood, their tongues divided, their hearts carrying both hope and rebellion. Among them, the sons of Japheth, Cush, and Meshech were destined to roam the northern reaches, their names appearing in prophecies that would echo across millennia. It was from these lineages that Gog arose, a prince of the north, whose ambition would one day shake the land of Israel and summon the armies of all nations to the final confrontation. Ezekiel spoke of him centuries later, not merely as a man, but as a symbol, a force orchestrated by the hidden hand of destiny. Son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him. Ezekiel 38:2. The language is cryptic, yet powerful, for it reveals that even in the earliest days of history, God had set in motion a divine timeline, a mystery in which the nations of the earth would play their roles in a cosmic drama. The covenant with Abraham, the promises made to Isaac and Jacob, all these threads converged on the land of Israel, a land chosen and protected, yet ever surrounded by the restless ambitions of neighboring nations. Moab, Ammon, Edom, and later, the far-reaching powers of the north. These were not mere adversaries of flesh and blood. They were the actors in a story that transcended time, whose motivations were both human and divinely orchestrated. Even as empires rose and fell, from Egypt to Assyria, from Babylon to Persia, the seeds of Gog and Magog's eventual appearance were sown. The northern tribes migrated, scattered yet persistent, carrying with them a legacy of defiance, a memory of exile, and the restless fire of ambition. They were shaped by the cold winds of distant lands, hardened by isolation and the harshness of northern mountains. These were the crucibles in which the prophecy was forged, where the echoes of future wars were first heard. The patriarchs had understood this. They had seen visions of nations yet unborn, battles yet unclaimed, and through dreams and angelic visitations, the destiny of the northern peoples was revealed. Jacob, in his final blessing, spoke of enemies that would rise from afar, and of the nations that would one day march against Israel in defiance of God's will. Even Moses, in his farewell address, warned of the time when foreign powers would conspire against the covenant people, yet be broken by the hand of the Almighty. Thus, the story of Gog and Magog is not a sudden occurrence. It is the culmination of history itself, a thread that weaves through the tapestry of humanity from the flood to the modern age. It is a tale of bloodlines and covenants, of divine purpose and human ambition, of a world moving inexorably toward the final confrontation foretold by the prophets. Long before the roar of modern armies, before the glint of missiles and the tremor of global tension, the ancient origins of this mystery were already set. The stage was prepared, the actors named, and the prophecy waiting to unfold in the fullness of time. A reminder that God's plan is neither hasty nor blind, and that even in the chaos of history, His purposes are eternal. Long before the world would tremble under the threat of modern superpowers, the first clash of Gog and Magog against Israel was written in the heavens and echoed across the land. It was not merely a battle of swords and shields, but a confrontation heavy with divine weight, a collision of human ambition and God's sovereignty. The northern tribes, hardened by centuries of exile and distance, gathered under the banner of Gog, their eyes aflame with defiance. They marched with precision, their chariots cutting through the valleys, their trumpets announcing a coming storm. But they were not merely soldiers. They were instruments of a prophecy unfolding, unaware that every step toward Israel carried the weight of eternity. The prophets had warned. Ezekiel, centuries earlier, had lifted his voice against this northern coalition. Prepare yourself and be ready, you and all your companies that are gathered about you, and be a guard for them. Ezekiel 38:7. The warning was clear. When these forces converge, their strength may seem insurmountable, but their purpose is known to God, and their defeat is certain in His timing. The first clash was sudden, a lightning strike upon the unsuspecting land. The mountains shook under the march of mighty armies. Rivers churned with the echoes of hooves and wheels. Yet amidst the chaos, the people of Israel did not stand alone. Their cries rose to the heavens, and the hand of the Almighty moved unseen. Fire rained upon the invaders, confusion spread through their ranks, and pride faltered under the weight of divine judgment. This was a confrontation not of mere geography, but of destiny. Every sword, every arrow, every shield struck bore the shadow of God's providence. Gog and Magog, though fierce and numerous, encountered a force far greater than their understanding. The battle was a reminder that no strategy, no alliance, no weapon of man can overturn the purposes decreed by the Eternal. Yet the clash also revealed the cunning of these northern nations. They had learned to exploit divisions, to manipulate fear, to press on the borders of the covenant people with relentless determination. Each encounter tested Israel's faith, sharpened their resolve, and reminded them that the protection of God was both a promise and a responsibility. The first prophetic clash was more than a warning. It was a lesson etched in blood and fire, demonstrating the stakes of the final confrontation yet to come. And so, as the dust settled over the first battlefield, the northern armies retreated, battered but unbroken, their names recorded in prophecy, their destiny intertwined with the end of days. The world had witnessed a foreshadowing of Armageddon, a rehearsal of the final march of nations against the land chosen by God. The echoes of this ancient conflict resonate still, a cautionary tale for generations to come, reminding all who watch and listen that history is never random and prophecy is never idle. The first clash had passed, yet the stage was far from empty. The northern powers would gather again, their ambition undiminished, their eyes fixed on Israel. The warning of the prophets remained. The final confrontation was approaching, and when it comes, no army will stand alone, no strategy will suffice, and no heart will be shielded from the reckoning of God. From the ashes of ancient clashes, the world began to tremble under the rise of empires, each more formidable than the last. Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, Persia. These were not mere kingdoms of men, but instruments in a divine narrative, their conquests and ambitions carefully observed from the heavens. The earth quaked beneath their feet. Rivers ran red with the blood of battle, and yet their rise was no accident. These empires were the shadow and mirror of prophecy, foreshadowing the final march of Gog and Magog. Assyria first emerged, fierce and relentless, a northern power whose chariots thundered across the plains, leaving fear in their wake. The prophet spoke of Assyria as a rod of wrath in the hand of God, yet even in their fury, they became a warning. Jerusalem trembled under their campaigns, yet the city endured, preserved by a hand unseen, a testament to the covenant that no empire, no matter how mighty, could overturn the divine plan. Then came Babylon, its golden towers and hanging gardens a testament to human pride and ambition. Nebuchadnezzar, King of Kings, swept across Judah and Jerusalem, fulfilling visions that Daniel would later record with trembling awe. He shall destroy mighty men and the holy city, and cast down the land of Judah. Daniel 9-26. The empire's armies, its strategies, its walls of bronze and stone, they all bowed to a higher decree, a lesson that human power is a fleeting shadow against the immovable purpose of God. Egypt, ancient and unyielding, rose once more with pharaohs who believed themselves divine. Their priests whispered of eternal power. Their armies stretched across the Nile, yet time and again they fell to the forces God permitted. The prophets warned, and history confirmed. No wealth, no sorcery, no legion of men can resist the unfolding of God's plan. Persia followed, a colossus of strategy and diplomacy, its kings wielding power over distant lands with iron and silk. The scrolls of Daniel speak of visions, of beasts and horns, of kingdoms that would rise and fall, yet serve the divine narrative. Persia's might was vast, its influence profound, yet it too became a stepping stone, a foreshadowing of the nations that would one day march against Israel in the climactic war foretold. The rise of these empires was more than political. It was spiritual, a test of faith for Israel, a rehearsal of the cosmic battles yet to come. Daniel saw visions of beasts rising from the sea, of horns that would wage war against the saints, of kingdoms that appear invincible, yet crumble at the touch of the Almighty. Ezekiel, too, warned of Gog from the north, whose armies would one day resemble these very powers, vast, organized, and filled with pride. And in the shadow of these ancient empires, the land of Israel remained a beacon, a focal point of divine attention. Each empire that rose and fell carried a message. Human power is temporary, but God's covenant is eternal. The northern nations that would later be known as Gog and Magog were forged in the crucible of these lessons, their strategies honed, their ambition sharpened, and their destiny intertwined with the unfolding plan of history. Were these empires merely tools in God's hand, their victories and defeats orchestrated to teach, to warn, to shape the world toward the final confrontation? The scrolls suggest so. Every tower built, every army marched, every kingdom that fell was part of a pattern, a divine choreography leading to a moment when all nations would converge against Israel. As the empires rose, so too did the tension in the land chosen by God. The stage for Gog and Magog was being set across centuries, their armies inspired by the ghosts of Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, and Persia. History was not random. It was prophecy written in stone and blood, a drumbeat that would one day signal the march of nations to the ultimate battlefield. The prophets spoke with voices that shook the heavens, words carved into scrolls that would endure for millennia. They warned of nations that would rise in pride, armies that would march with unstoppable force, and kings whose ambition would blind them to the sovereignty of God. Ezekiel, with eyes open to visions beyond mortal comprehension, declared, "Son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog. Behold, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal." Ezekiel 38:2-3. These were not idle threats. They were declarations of a future already written, a cosmic confrontation awaiting the appointed hour. Gog and Magog, the Northern Confederation, are described as a storm gathering from the ends of the earth. Their armies, vast and innumerable, would descend upon Israel like a wave of destruction, their purpose wrapped in arrogance and defiance. Yet the prophets insist that God Himself will intervene, turning their pride into ruin and their plans into ash, fire, brimstone, earthquakes. These are the weapons that no human hand wields, reserved for the day when rebellion reaches its zenith. The warnings did not stop with Ezekiel. Zechariah foresaw a time when nations would assemble against Jerusalem. Yet the Lord would rise in defense of His people. In that day I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling. All the nations of the earth will gather against it. Zechariah 12:2. The imagery is stark. A city surrounded, a world united in defiance, and yet protected by a power invisible, yet undeniable. Each prophecy is both a caution and a promise. Israel's enemies may advance, but the God who holds the stars also shields the covenant land. Daniel, the keeper of visions, spoke of beasts and horns, empires that would rise in fury, and kings that would wage war against the saints. These visions are not confined to antiquity. They echo in the pages of today's headlines, in the shifting alliances and rising tensions across the globe. Prophecy, the sages whispered, is a mirror of what humanity often cannot see. The spiritual currents beneath the march of armies, the divine hand steering history toward its destined end. Even the minor prophets joined the chorus of warning. Joel described a day of darkness and fire, when the earth would quake and the nations would stumble under God's judgment. Habakkuk cried out at the rise of brutal powers, questioning how long violence would be allowed to triumph, only to be reassured that the Lord's justice is inevitable and complete. These prophetic warnings carry urgency. They are not distant fables, but messages encoded in history and nature, foreshadowing the final confrontation of Gog and Magog. The northern nation's march is no surprise to God. Every strategy, every weapon, every alliance is under His watchful eye. The prophecies insist that the armies of the world are not omnipotent. Pride precedes the fall, and defiance is met with divine reckoning. Could these words be unfolding in our own time? The signs are unmistakable. The gathering of alliances, the rhetoric of dominance, the preparation of arsenals capable of devastation. Unimaginable. Prophecy is not passive. It is alive, a warning to those who will listen, a testament to the power of God, and a prelude to the final battle where the faithful will witness the fulfillment of promises that stretch from Ezekiel to Daniel, from Zechariah to Joel. The scrolls speak with clarity. Nations may rise, empires may march, and armies may advance, but God's purposes will prevail. Gog and Magog are not myth. They are warning and certainty, harbingers of the end times confrontation that will shake the earth, illuminate the heavens, and fulfill the visions of the prophets. The words of the prophets were never meant to remain sealed in ancient scrolls. They whisper across centuries, echoing into the corridors of modern power, where nations rise and fall under the shadow of ambition and fear. Today, the stage for Gog and Magog is being set before our very eyes. Alliances shift like sand. Missiles glint in the sun, and armies train under banners that will one day march toward Jerusalem. The ancient warnings have not faded. They have become a mirror reflecting the precarious balance of our world. Consider Israel, a small nation surrounded by neighbors whose histories are intertwined with conquest, rebellion, and the echoes of ancient empires. Its existence is constantly threatened, yet its endurance is remarkable. Prophecy unfolds not only in scripture, but in the headlines. Rising tensions in the Middle East, whispers of coalitions forming, threats from the north, the east, and the south. Each movement of diplomacy, each military exercise, each cyber strike seems to echo the march of Gog's armies across Ezekiel's vision. To the north, the shadows of Magog are unmistakable. Nations with growing military might, political influence, and territorial ambition stir unease across continents. Their rhetoric is fiery, their intentions opaque, yet the pattern mirrors the prophetic description: vast armies, coordinated strategies, and the thirst for dominance. Satellite images of troop movements, intelligence reports of missile deployments, the global media covering cyber warfare and economic pressure. All of this forms a modern tapestry of the prophecy once written on scrolls. In the East, powers long thought distant now flex their strength, forming alliances that challenge the status quo. Weapon systems, nuclear capabilities, and strategic positioning suggest more than simple geopolitical competition. It is as though the earth itself is aligning for a confrontation foretold, a battle where pride and power meet divine purpose. Ezekiel's vision of Gog coming from the north, with all his hordes, resonates in the news reports of coordinated military drills, cyber espionage, and secret pacts that seem to bypass conventional diplomacy. Even the West is not immune. Nations boasting technological supremacy, economic power, and international influence participate in a subtle chess game where every move has consequence. Prophecy is alive in these maneuvers, revealing that the modern world is not immune to the spiritual currents that govern history. Israel's enemies may not march in bronze chariots, yet the weapons of today, drones, missiles, cyber warfare, are no less potent, no less capable of bringing nations to the brink. The prophets also warned of surprise alliances, unexpected coalitions, forged in ambition or desperation. Today, we see echoes of this in the growing interdependence and rivalry between states, in the tensions that flare across the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and beyond. Ezekiel's vision of Gog leading nations from the north, all of them coordinated for one final confrontation, is no longer confined to imagination. It is a lens through which modern headlines can be read. Yet amidst this tension, Israel remains a beacon, a focal point in the divine narrative. The persistence of this nation, its survival despite overwhelming odds, is a testament to prophecy fulfilled, and a warning that no earthly power can overturn the covenant established by God. Every missile intercepted, every alliance that falters, every plot that is thwarted reflects the eternal truth. Human pride may rise, but divine purpose endures. Could it be that we are living inside prophecy right now? The signs are unmistakable. Nations maneuvering, alliances forming, threats looming, technology amplifying the destructive potential of pride and rebellion. The modern world, with all its complexity and power, echoes the ancient warnings. Gog and Magog are no longer distant visions. They are shadows moving across the map, their armies taking shape in the rhetoric, strategy, and tension of our time. History and prophecy converge in the headlines. The ancient scrolls whisper through the corridors of power, revealing that the end times confrontation is not a matter of if, but of when. And as the nations march, as alliances solidify, and as weapons of unprecedented power stand ready, the world teeters on the edge, of the prophetic storm foretold millennia ago. Beyond the rolling thunder of armies, beyond the flash of missiles and the clamor of nations, there lies a war unseen by mortal eyes. The prophet spoke not only of flesh and blood, but of principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness in high places. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Ephesians 6-12. Every alliance, every threat, every rise of a superpower is but a shadow of a greater struggle waged in realms beyond the human eye. Gog and Magog are not merely geographical or political entities. They are instruments in a cosmic drama. The assembling of nations is orchestrated not solely by human ambition, but by the spiritual forces that seek to oppose the will of God. Pride, rebellion, and the lust for domination are their weapons, whispered into the hearts of kings and generals, shaping decisions that appear strategic, yet are influenced by dark currents invisible to most. This battle is the true context behind every headline, every warning, every strategic calculation. Technology, intelligence, armies, they are only the instruments. The unseen war rages across dimensions, a struggle for hearts, for nations, for the ultimate authority over the course of history. Each missile, each cyber attack, each diplomatic maneuver is mirrored in the spiritual battlefield, a testament to the stakes far higher than the human mind can fully grasp. Yet within this conflict, there is hope. The prophets reveal that God's hand is not idle. His angels, His judgments, and His promises operate in realms unseen, guiding history toward fulfillment. The faithful are called to discernment, prayer, and righteousness, standing not merely with weapons of war, but with the armor of God, truth, righteousness, faith, salvation, and the Word of God as shield and sword. It is a battle fought as much with spirit as with strategy, as much with vigilance as with vision. The spiritual battle illuminates why prophecy can be so precise, yet so terrifying. Nations rise and fall not by chance, but by a tapestry of divine orchestration and spiritual conflict. Gog and Magog, the northern hordes of defiance, march under the influence of powers opposed to God. Yet their defeat is written in the scrolls of eternity. The clash of armies on earth reflects a far grander conflict, a war for the destiny of the world itself. In this unseen theater, the wise watch, the faithful pray, and the world teeters on the edge of revelation. The coming confrontation is more than geopolitics. It is a battle for souls, a reckoning between light and darkness, a fulfillment of prophecy that transcends time. Understanding this spiritual reality transforms fear into awareness, chaos into context, and the march of nations into a stage upon which the divine narrative unfolds. The earth trembles, the seas roar. From the north, the hordes of Gog and Magog advance, their armor clanging, their banners snapping in the wind, their eyes burning with defiance. The world holds its breath. Nations brace, alliances tighten, missiles rise, and armies converge. Yet above this cacophony of fear and steel, the heavens stir with a power no weapon can confront. The final act of history is at hand, and prophecy unfolds with terrifying clarity. From the hills of Israel to the plains of Megiddo, the stage is set. The Mount of Olives stands like a sentinel, waiting for the moment when heaven will intervene. The air is thick with anticipation, charged with the tension of centuries. Angels, unseen by mortal eyes, move with precision, their presence a reminder that this is not a human war. It is the culmination of divine orchestration. Every step of Gog's advance, every deployment of armor and artillery is mirrored in the scrolls of prophecy, written long before the first sword was forged. The armies clash with fury, yet their might is fleeting against the power of God. Fire rains from the heavens. The ground shakes beneath the tread of celestial authority. Ezekiel's vision comes alive. The invaders, confident in their numbers and strategies, are struck with fear and confusion. Their weapons falter, their courage crumbles, and the cries of battle echo not only across Israel, but through the corridors of eternity. History itself seems to pause, watching the fulfillment of a promise long foretold. Mountains split, rivers overflow, and the skies blaze with a light that defies comprehension. The King of Kings descends, the Lion of Judah, leading legions of angels. Yet it is his presence alone that turns the tide. Armies meant to destroy are scattered like chaff before the wind. The proud and the defiant are humbled, their plans undone by a power they cannot grasp. The valley of Megiddo becomes both battlefield and theater of divine judgment, where the scales of eternity tip in favor of the faithful. This is the moment the prophet spoke of, the culmination of centuries of warning, vision, and divine insight. Gog and Magog, the nations of rebellion, meet the righteous authority of God and fall before him. Jerusalem, long the focal point of conflict, becomes the emblem of divine sovereignty. The earth itself testifies to the fulfillment of prophecy, its mountains and rivers proclaiming the eternal rule of the Almighty. Yet the fulfillment is not only judgment, it is restoration. Peace descends like a balm over the land. The faithful who have watched, prayed, and endured are vindicated. Nations that trembled in fear now recognize the hand of God. The final war, the confrontation foretold across millennia, ends not with the triumph of human power, but with the assertion of divine will. The scrolls once sealed have been opened. The visions, once distant, now stand as reality. The coming fulfillment is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It is the climax of prophecy, the revelation of God's authority, and the dramatic conclusion to the narrative that has spanned generations. The world will never be the same. Every heart will reckon with the truth. The God who commands the heavens commands the earth, and no army, no nation, no power can stand against him when the appointed time arrives. The march of prophecy has spanned millennia, from the earliest whispers of the covenant to the assembling of nations under the banners of Gog and Magog. We have seen the rise and fall of empires, the warnings etched in the words of Ezekiel and Daniel, and the shadows of rebellion stretching across history. Every clash, every judgment, every divine intervention has pointed to this final hour, when the hand of God moves decisively to fulfill what was foretold. We have walked through the origins of nations, felt the weight of the first prophetic confrontations, witnessed the empires that rose and fell as instruments of his will, and listened to the warnings spoken across centuries. We have glimpsed the modern parallels in today's headlines, the assembling of forces and alliances, the threats that whisper of chaos, yet all under the vigilant gaze of a sovereign God. The unseen spiritual battle reminds us that what appears to be worldly conflict is but a reflection of a cosmic struggle, where principalities and powers clash, and where faith, vigilance, and righteousness serve as armor for the faithful. And in the final fulfillment, the descent upon Mount of Olives, the scattering of Gog and Magog, the revelation of divine authority. We witness the ultimate truth. No human power can thwart the purpose of the Almighty. This is more than history, more than prophecy. It is a call to awareness. The world around us may seem uncertain, chaotic, and threatening. Yet the narrative of Scripture assures us that God's plan is unfolding. We are witnesses to the culmination of a divine story, and our response matters. Will we stand with understanding, courage, and faith? Will we recognize the signs of the times and prepare our hearts for what is to come? Share these revelations, discuss them, and remain vigilant. Subscribe, like, comment, and help spread the insight that prophecy is not distant. It is alive, unfolding, and speaking to us today. The pages of history and Scripture are converging, and every soul has a role in witnessing the divine drama that continues to unfold. Stay alert, for the next episode in this prophetic series will guide you deeper into the mysteries that shape nations, hearts, and the very destiny of the world.